summoned you here for a purpose.
TransformYourGame.net.
Welcome one, welcome all, and welcome back. This is the second part of episode 4 for the Transform Your Game podcast. I, as always, am your host and moderator, Richard. I'm joined by my 3 bright and benevolent co-hosts, Kent, Kai, and Joel. Say hi, guys.
What's up?
Hey.
Hey there.
Whether you're listening to us on YouTube or SoundCloud, we appreciate you joining us today. Real quickly, we'd like to remind you about a few things. First is the Hunterbird Memorial Open, the weekend of March the 28th. They're up in the Dallas area. They've got a Transformers TCG tournament this year in addition to the normal Magic events they host there. So come out and support raising suicide awareness while playing some fun tournament-level TFTCG. Second is the Gaming vs. Cancer multi-game event going on in Southampton, March the 21st. Correction from the first part of the podcast. You should really try and make it out there if you're in the area. It's a great cause, and they've got tons of stuff going on. You can check out their Facebook page if you're curious as to what all that is. I'm sure we can include a link in the description of the video. And lastly is that we are officially taking submissions for regional tournaments to be counted toward the TransformYourGame.net Player of the Year race. You can follow the instructions from the article we've posted just recently on our site and send your submissions in either through the Contact Us portion of that site or by email to transformyourgame.net@gmail.com. With that taken care of, we're here with the remainder of the spoilers from the week preceding March the 10th. Fellas, while we wait for each other and also for the audience to pull up spoilers if they'd like to follow along, what's the first deck you plan to explore once Wave 5 releases, given the stuff we know now?
For me, it's definitely Windsweeper. Trying to find a build that really works for him. Not only do I just love planes, I'm actually a big fan of that character, even though he's a really, really minor character. And the fact that they did his art so just rocking cool makes me want to play him even more. I've loved the idea of moving damage counters to my opponent, so yeah.
I'm personally actually looking to revisiting a major Shockwave.
Shockwave! What is your command, Megatron?
I've been theory crafting a few ideas, and based on what we have right now, I think I might have something.
For me, I really would like to use Fangry and a lot of Bold and deal a lot of damage to people. I think I was sending you all some deck ideas earlier about a million Bold on like turn 2 or something like that. So that sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know if it's the most tournament worthy deck, but if you can flip almost your whole deck over on turn 2, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I think it should be. For me, I'm just, I think we've gotten so many spoilers since the time that this guy got revealed that people kind of have somehow forgotten a little bit about Perceptor. But just experimenting with different Perceptor shells, him alongside Sky Shadow, him alongside the Airstrike Patrol, him alongside other patrols. I just think that character is so good, and I do love so very much to draw cards. So I'm really excited to try and play with him and see if we can't prove that Dan Arnold's invitational card is busted.
It is.
It's busted. Call it in.
All right. So I think now that we've wholly given the viewers enough time to pull this up, we should dive into the other stratagems. Don't you guys think?
Cool.
Joel?
Yeah, let's start with Master Converter. That's the new stratagem for Blitzwing from Wave 2. It says, while your Blitzwing Relentless Foe is in either alt mode, he has the tank and plane rates. I'm not super interested in this card. I'm sorry. Blitzwing wasn't good, and this really isn't going to make him any better.
Yeah. I expressed some hope. We were talking about the failed stratagems for Windblade and for Springer in Cammy Toughness and Better Things to Do Than Die. I was like, maybe the third one will be playable. Maybe it'll be really good. And Master Converter is just, unfortunately for me, I think it's another almost, right? Like, I think all of those stratagems, they're just missing like a slight bump in power level to really make them like playable and the super rares that they were supposed to accompany like truly playable. I think this only answers part of the problem with Blitzwing. I think he had multiple problems. I think this only partially answers one of them. I do think that like it's kind of cute that you can play Blitzwing with two-pronged attack in the same way that you. There's going to be too many tactics, but I think stars to pay for getting what you're getting. Unfortunately, this really isn't my favorite. I'm just kind of bummed at this one too because Blitzwing is such a cool character.
Yeah, for me so far, I wish they would have combined all the stratagems that help the Wave 2 SRTs all into one of them. Give the healing or repair, so to speak, to everyone when they transform. Give the +1/+1 to each one of them that Camion Toughness does, and then let them have the traits of their other modes. I mean, literally, you would have to do that for any of them to be playable at a competitive level.
I think giving all of that may actually be a little too good for 1 star.
Yeah.
Personally.
Nah, let's do it. I want to see them. I want to see them in competitive tournaments, and just I think even if if you gave Blitzwing +1/+1 and repair every time he switches modes, I still don't know that card's playable. Like, maybe?
I mean, I think for me, I actually like this stratagem because of the deck that we've already mentioned 3 times in this podcast series and have yet to gone into much elaboration on.
The essence of the secret doctrine has always been there.
With that deck, it was always just weird attacking in tank mode and not getting the heal off Slipstream, or just it made it more awkward. So this will make it more smooth, and it was missing a star anyway, and I didn't really want to play Energized Field, so I'm more interested than everyone, but I do realize that this is not what anyone other than me is looking for. So
You should definitely put that list in our Google Drive, though.
I'm waiting for more blue blacks. That's
All
it.
right. So we've got our own spoiler, is the only other stratagem to be talked about from this week, which is Bite Gang. And we delved into this in pretty specific detail in our spoiler article on transformyourgame.net. You can go ahead and read it there if you want to. I recommend going there for other articles and strategy pieces as well. But this one needs you to play Chromia Special Ops from Wave 1 star, and it says when one of your motorcycles attacks while you have Chromia Special Ops on the battlefield and you flip at least white, that motorcycle gets +2 attack until end of battle. So functionally what it ends up doing is it's kind of like a slightly weaker version of the ability on Raider Tailwind that he does for the Airstrike Patrol, which is a really powerful ability. I think we can all agree on that. With just a slightly different deck construction. I think this is the kind of thing that, like, really you want more motorcycles to be printed in the game for it to be, like, something you consider at a competitive level. But that said, I still think it is miles and miles better than Pop-Up Attack.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at some point, probably not anytime soon, but with cards like Bike Gang and Papa Wheelie favoring the white pips, we may see white become a color all by itself, maybe reserved just for that tribe. Once we see Wreck-Gar and the Junkions printed, because they are motorcycles as well, this may get some more love too.
Side note real quick. Ken, do you think that Wreck-Gar could be a motorcycle in both modes?
It'd be cool if he was.
Because doesn't he pop up like his top half on top of the motorcycle as the rider?
No.
Oh.
What you may be thinking of is in the Transformers movie, there's a rider of the motorcycle that's a Junkion, and then there's the motorcycle itself, which is a Junkion. And every time one of them gets damaged, they both just flip to the other mode. So the motorcycle becomes the rider and the rider becomes the motorcycle. Lore-wise, they have a regenerative thing when they're in the opposite mode like that. So then when they get knocked down again, they just flip over again. And it's this continuous thing, so it's this like unstoppable army. I would love to see something with them whenever they're released where it's almost like run amok and runabout. When you transform one, the other one transforms too. Only it's into the opposite mode. Would be really cool.
Does anybody else have anything else to say about this one? Or do you think that people should go read the article instead?
Check out our article.
Yeah, check out the article. I'm going to reserve judgment on this card until future sets release because there's not a whole lot of motorcycles right now, but in the future there might be. I think the biggest downside of this card is that they have to attack in motorcycle mode.
Yeah, totally agree.
Cool. Well, the first battle card we're going to talk about is Counter Espionage, and oh boy, I am in love with this card. It is a rare, a black pip, and a green pip. It's an action. Name an action. Then look at your opponent's hand and each face down enemy secret action. Your opponent scraps each card from among them with that name. Oh my god, this card is awesome. If you remember Cabal Therapy from Magic way back, and I mean like 15 years ago, that far back, this is very similar. The only difference is you can pick this card up at will and use it because of the green pip, and being able to get rid of your opponent's secret actions, that is just invaluable. Like, hey, you know they're only running Sabotage Armaments in their deck, and you just threw an Energon Axe or grenade launcher on your guy, and you're about to try and swing for the fence, or you're playing, but they've got a secret action down, you know exactly what it is, and you're like, yeah, get rid of it. Against some kind of control deck, and you really don't want them to have this certain card, or even against a combo deck, you don't want them to have a certain action. Bye-bye. It's gone. This is going to be a very skill testing card for a lot of people.
Here's a test, surprising in its ability to trip us up.
You're gonna have to know your matchups really, really well and be able to play this at its full potential.
Yeah, and if you do feel that this card is going to be really prevalent, which I would say that we're all pretty much on that side that it will be prevalent, then you're going to have to start mixing up your secret actions, because this card not only hits secret or the face down secret actions, it hits any in your hand as well, and it scraps every single one. So if you have 2 sabotages, 1 in set and 1 in hand, yeah, just say goodbye to them. So
Yeah.
you will have to start mixing up your secret actions. You can't just play 3 Heidi Fort and 3 sabotage.
I think this card's biggest application is going to be in getting rid of your opponent's green pip cards if they just picked up on the attack that you know is going to be a problem card, and you can get rid of it. You can pick this card up anytime you want. Hey, we just had combat, and you attacked, and you flipped these cards, and you picked up this green pip, and well, I'm going to pick up my Counter Espionage also, and I'm going to make you get rid of it. So I think that's where it's most useful. A lot of other times you're just going to be guessing, or you would save it for the final most important turn. Hey, if you don't have this time as your secret action, then I'm going to win anyway, no matter what.
Well, that's plenty wise. We know what we're holding, and we know what you're holding.
So I'll say this secret action, and you have it, you don't have it, it doesn't matter.
So I actually have a funny story about that. We were playtesting this past Monday, yesterday, and Damien, one of our local guys, he was playing Overwhelming Advantage, and he played his Counter Espionage, calling my Counter Espionage, so that he could play Overwhelming Advantage next turn. And I was like, oh man, I didn't have it in hand, but it was very funny that was what it went down to.
That would be amazing. That's so dope. Oh man. I really like this card. I really love I really love green pips. They're just the power of them is so understated, right? Like I know that when Wave 2 was out, like people originally started with like 3 espionages in their deck and eventually trimmed the numbers down to something like 1. I wouldn't be surprised to see a similar pattern with this card here. People start with maybe a higher number, something like 2, and then eventually cut it down to 1, because I think it has enough broad applications that you can totally main deck a copy of this card and it be completely defensible, in my opinion. I think that there are certain decks that just like straight up fold to opposing sabotage. If you have in particular like Battle Masters, like those in particular struggle so heavily against sabotage armaments, and the ability to get rid of them is really powerful. I also think that you can do something like the Galaxy Prime decks that were very popular in Wave 4. The only card that was truly against them if they did their thing successfully was Disarm. And I think the fact that you can name a card that isn't a secret action with Counter Espionage gives it just like infinitely more utility. People, if you ever when you hit a card and you're trading 1-for-1 with counter espionage, you're already basically up some extra amount of cards because of the information you've gained by looking at your opponent's hand. Or if you're looking at a secret action, even if you didn't name that secret action, you can look at it and then try to play around that card. I think that there is so much use here. There's so much power. It's versatile. This card's going to see play. I'm pumped.
So the next card that we have is Conversion Expertise. It's a white pip upgrade utility. While the upgraded character is in alt mode, it has tough 1, and while the upgraded character is in bot mode, it has bold 1. I think this card is more of a product of the fact that a lot of the sets are designed for limited, like where they work out of, like pulling out of the pack. So this kind of feels like you have to have a type of effect for like sealed play, because you don't have to flip for the tough, or have a armor for say combat training, but I don't think those cards would see play even if it didn't require that. So I think this card is just more of a necessity for sealed.
Yeah, the power level of this card is not very high. You can get a stronger effect out of your utility slot from a lot of other cards. So the tough 1 or bold 1 isn't super relevant. It's definitely a limited card.
Yeah, I think it's going to be awesome and limited. I think it's interesting that like you could pair it with something like, you could stack it with a character like Night Racer, right, who already has tough 1 in alt mode and has bold and can get bold 1 in bot mode. So it kind of like stacks those abilities together, kind of like to try to, maybe you could make some kind of critical mass with this. I don't know. I'm really more just spitballing. I think this card is cool. It's interesting. I do think the most like similar card to is maybe Combat Expertise, the rare from Wave 1. Which gives you a bold 1 if you have a weapon, I believe, and tough 1 if you have an armor. But I think this one is probably a little bit better, even if it's in the same vein. I'm not particularly excited to play this anything, but it will always go into my sealed deck.
Yeah, it really does feel like a limited thing. I will say the art is kind of interesting because it has tracks going into his 3 modes, the car mode.
Tracks! That's who it is. It was bugging me. I could not identify the character.
Oh, the wings.
Yeah, then it goes into car mode with wings, which is a G1 throwback, and then he flies up and then delivers flying kick. I will say, like, when he's the car with wings, it looks like one of the wings is melting or something. Like, it doesn't look quite right, but
I think it's in mid-transformation. That's what it is.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, our next card is Nitro Booster. It's a rare utility upgrade. It's a double black pip with the second black being specific to cars. So when the upgraded character attacks and has 3 attack or less, untap it and scrap this card. I think this card is really neat. Obviously, it goes into Cars deck. It's not going to be very effective in a lot of other decks, at least not for the black pips that you're trying to get out of it. I really like double pip cards, like double in the same color pip cards for no stars. It's super useful. This is good for defense for a little bot that they can attack and then untap, and then whoever you attacked with before, again, is whoever you're using to tank, in other words, is having to tank again. The card would be busted if it just said untap and it didn't get scrapped, so that's why it has to be scrapped in a turn. You have to put it on a really little bot, so I think it's pretty obvious that it goes in a deck that's based on Pierce. Otherwise, this character that you're attacking with that's only 3 attack or less isn't even getting any damage.
I do like untap effects, right? Like Turbo Boosters and Start Your Engines are obviously powerful. Ready for Action is an obviously powerful card. If that card wasn't a blank pip, it'd be everywhere, right? I think that Nitro Booster is interesting, and that is another untap effect that can kind of go on any archetype, right? Like it may say car in the pip, or may show car. I guess it doesn't technically say car. It's more like the icon. But the fact that it like that is there, but I like that you don't necessarily have to play it in a car's archetype. I think this card will be great and limited when you open it, because you can untap your smaller characters. I also think that it's an interesting thing to do. Like there are more characters who can have less than 3 attack and really be orange beaters. I think the cards that come to mind are Lionizer and Demolisher firsthand. Like those cards, even if you put something like an Erratic Lightning on those characters, their base attack is still 3 or less, and getting extra attacks out of something like that is massive. It's super huge. Whereas a blue-black deck that's more defensive with smaller characters, I think, is also something that could use this. And I think it should be noted, just for the viewers in case this isn't obvious to them, is that the window at which this checks if the character has 3 or less attacks will be before you flip. So the oranges you flip during combat will not be adding to the attack when the Nitro Booster untap checks. That's something that does make the power level much higher.
That's an important distinction for sure.
Yeah, I'm dumb. That went right over my head. My apologies.
Oh, that's okay. You're not dumb. It's just it's easy to miss.
I actually think that this reminds me a lot of Ready for Action in a lot of ways, because most of the characters that you can untap with Ready for Action kind of fall into this category of 3 attack or less. Not all of them, but I actually have been wondering about a orange-black bugs deck and then using this with kickback. And yeah, like, hey, we're going to swing for a ton, and then you're not going to be able to hit him because he's untapped. And now I'm going to do it again. And it's all orange, black, Pierce. I don't know. This card is rather interesting to me. I think, as Richard said, Demolisher's a great fit, and I'm sure that there's other characters that we're not thinking about as well.
So I actually think this card is going to break orange, black. As you've stated already, Lionizer, Demolisher, Kickback, like all of the ones that have 0 attack, this card is insane with them. And basically, this and Horrible, I think, is probably going to be enough of a factor to where orange-black can probably overcome their weakness to orange now. Because, like, just this card, anytime you draw it, you're instantly whiter. All you have to do is play it. You're guaranteed damage because you're orange-black anyway, and then you untap, and then they have to swing into your Lionizer or whoever you threw out to begin with. And if it's a Titan Master, then you get more attack. So it's this card is be on the lookout for this card. This card is going to break open that deck easily, and I would know because I'm the resident team member who's been exploring the orange-black stuff. So yeah, this card is really, really good.
The next card we have is Concealing Contrails. In an interesting parallel to the previous spoiler, it too is a tribal double black pip, where the first black is guaranteed for anyone who flips it, but the second black pip is only guaranteed for characters who have the plain trait. Interestingly, I don't know if this was like apparent to you guys, but weirdly enough, the pip that has the tribal icon in it is the second one on Concealing Contrails, where it's the top one on Nitro Booster. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't notice that.
That is weird.
That's so weird. I don't know if that's intentional or not. My guess is it was kind of like accidental. But regardless, what the card actually does is it's an uncommon secret action that you reveal one of your character's defends and you flip battle cards. So when you reveal it, that defender gets +1 defense till end of turn for each black pip you flipped. So it basically turns black pips into extra blue pips while you're on defense when you have Concealing Contrails, which means your blue-black pip cards, something like Steady Shot or Point Position, actually function as double blues in your deck, which could be really awesome. And blue-black is definitely something that Plains is interested in doing with Windsweeper and Slipstream, moving damage, kind of like that kind of like nickel and diming type game. This card is interesting to me.
Yeah, so I'm a pretty big fan of this card. Really wanting to try it out in the Plains deck with Windsweeper and Slipstream, and like you were saying, the nickel and diming, lots and lots of Pierce as much as you can, but the problem with Plains is they're so fragile. So you definitely need cards like this. I wish it had a green pip on it to really push it over the edge into, we're gonna be running quite a few of those, because yes, it can help black piercing Plains so much. However, the fact is, without a green pip, you could go 3 matches in a tournament without seeing this, and that could be pretty problematic.
That's totally true. I didn't think about that.
Well, I think you could say that about any card, really. I mean, if your deck is relying on seeing this card, then that's a mistake. But when you do see it, it's going to be a very powerful effect. If every time that you play this down, I mean, it's like a massive hidden fortification type card or something. Like every card you're flipping is a double blue-ish pip kind of card. That would be a really big deal.
Oh yeah, and the fact that it plays around belligerence because it's giving the black pips +1 defense. So it's like it gives in blue blacks an inherent type of out to belligerence, and on top of the fact that it will, if you flip concealing contrails on your defense, then it will give you +2 defense because the plain one, it doesn't give you the peaked one, but it does still count for the effect that you flipped one, so you will get 2 defense.
That's so true.
So all the double blues that have a trait, or all the double blacks, that have a trait, are really, really solid with this card. Because this is Night Racer.
Yeah.
I've got some ideas.
I bet you do.
Okay, so the next card we have is Spy Satellite Uplink. And this was revealed just a few days ago, and I will say I love the picture on this. I don't know what it is about satellite dishes, but I just think they look really cool. There's a comet going by in the background. Anyways, this is an uncommon black pip, green pip as well, upgrade utility that gives +1 attack, which is kind of rare for utilities to do that, but it is becoming more and more common. Enemies cannot use Brave or Stealth against the upgraded character. This is a great sideboard card. Maybe not now, but in the future, I really feel that this will be. There are some cards that have Stealth that you would love to just be able to take out, or there's a Brave character like Ultra Magnus protecting another character that you want to get to, but you just can't because you have to deal with Ultra Magnus first. This is a great way around those problems, and I know that we saw an action that was similar to this in Wave 3, I believe, but this is even better.
Yeah, the +1 attack is really what pushes it over the edge, because Battlefield Scan is good for wheel turns, but I don't think you can really expect too many wheel turns in this game at this point that are 2 or more characters. But yeah, this card is definitely going to see play, especially in the Airstrike mirrors, because good God, that is dumb.
So you'll pick me up tonight at 7:45?
Oh, well, no, I got a few things to take care of first, but why don't we make it 7:45?
I think this card would be more relevant in that sort of case if you could play it on turn 1 when all of the characters are stealth except for one, like the General Optimus or something like that. But if you can play it on turn 2 or turn 3 or turn 4, it doesn't really matter because they've already exposed the character that they want you to attack. So stopping Stealth or Brave in that case isn't as big of a deal, but it is a very good sideboard card because of the green pip. So in those niche cases where you really have to stop Brave or you really need to stop Stealth because it's super important in this particular matchup, then this card's really going to shine there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Airstrike mirrors are the first place that appeared, kind of like popped into my head where this might be useful. The idea that you could take out opposing Raider Tailwinds before that ability was really relevant, and then kind of exacted a lot of the torture on you that flipping those green pips does. But being able to take out Raider Tailwind before you kind of really get punished by his ability, like kind of spreading that Lord type effect to the other Airstrike Patrol, is just going to be huge. The amount of tempo that it earns you is enormous. I don't think there are too many Braver Stealth characters that are kind of crushing the game at the moment. I do think that this could still be useful if like Aerial Bots ever rises back to the top, being able to ignore Fireflight, I believe his name is, the Brave Plane. I always just call him the Brave Plane. I can't help myself. Getting rid of that. Maybe if like Hiding Spot or Bravery or those type of effects like ever become prevalent in the game, I feel like this could be good against them. Yeah, I mean, I like this card.
So the next card that we have is Paralyzo Box. It is a white-green, and the green has a ranged hybrid icon on it, and it is a weapon. When the upgraded character attacks, choose a battle icon color. Then your opponent reveals the top card of their deck. If it has a battle icon of the chosen color, the upgraded character gets +4 until end of battle. and it has no static stats, which that's really good. Because +4 is pretty good as is. The only problem I really have with it is there's not only is mixing pip colors just becoming more prevalent now with things like focus or just however many pips there are on a card. Like you can also hit things like white cards or backup beams in an orange deck or sparring gears in a blue deck. So I don't think you're going to hit the +4 all that often, but it's still pretty strong for a +4 weapon that you can grab with the range character.
Yeah, I think that this isn't going to be particularly effective most of the time. You wouldn't want to play it in an aggressive deck because you could just use grenade launcher. In a non-aggressive deck, there's better options that can guarantee you damage. There's times when this would be good. I mean, I guess if you're playing the promo Soundwave, then this is useful. Otherwise you're going to miss too often. It's going to feel bad when you miss and you played this upgrade and you don't even get any effect out of it.
I think one of the most powerful things about this card is it has kind of that like it exists effect on it. So what I mean by that is this card is, interestingly enough, powerful because it is an incentive against monocolored decks dominating the format, right? If your deck becomes too consistent in that, like the number of flips that it's trying to do, like if it's streamlined very, very much to one direction, then Paralyzo Box will make its way into the metagame as a way to kind of combat you and will ultimately kind of make that rock, paper, scissors of matchup games start to rotate once more. I think that's a really interesting thing to have in the game. I think it's a very good thing to have in the game. And the other thing I think is important to mention about this card is I didn't think they were going to give us conditional green pips based on the tags or the traits, right? Green pips are so powerful, they're so interesting, but I think that if you like having the capability they've printed and shown us now that you can give us green pips that are conditional, they only apply in certain scenarios. I think that's a really interesting way to increase deck diversity if you print a card that has that type of effect on it. I also think it's a way to buff certain like tribes, right? So we've talked about before that ranged is clearly the best as far as the combat tribes go. But they could do one of these for wreckers, right? Like they give green pips to good cards for wreckers, or they could do it for melee or specialists to help them kind of catch up a little bit in the combat tribe race. Yeah, I like a lot of what this card implies or kind of like suggests more than what it actually does itself. Like the context around it is more interesting to me.
Yeah, that's really well said, Richard. I feel that this is a sideboard card at most. If you're playing Airstrike Patrol and you're going against Orange Black Pierce, you could easily side this in and take them to town. You just say black, because even some of their white pips are black also because they run 3 swerve, just for the pips. That's basically why that deck exists. So it feels like a good counter to that deck, and I agree, it kind of helps stabilize the metagame from slanting too far in one direction or the other.
Next we have High Five. It has a green pip. It's an action. It says choose 2 of your characters. If they share a trait, repair 1 damage from each of them. And traits appear with icons under character names. So this is sort of a better medic because it repairs 2, but it does it to 2 characters, and you can pick it up. You can pick it up with your green pip. I do have a question for our lore master. I was unaware that every Transformer had 5 fingers to have a high five. I thought some of them had less.
Some of them do. Some of them don't have fingers at all, like Shockwave.
Or Whirl.
Or Whirl. Or Scorponok is a perfect example.
So, what would you rename this card?
Slap hands.
But if they're claws, they're not hands.
Oh my god.
What a conundrum.
Appendages.
Slap appendages. Slamming.
We slapping.
I think like cool, bro. That'd be a good one.
What about like hug it out?
hug it out. They have to give each other a hug.
Yeah, because you can hug with like all the other random appendages that Transformers have, right? As far as High Five goes, the actual card, this is fine. This card's nothing particularly special. I will play it in several of my limited decks because those can be kind of grindy, particularly if there's a lot of black pips in the format. Green pips are very powerful. It's hard to ignore that. I just don't know that this card is really any better than, say, like a Repair Bay, and Repair Bay already doesn't see any play. And that card just excites me a lot more than this. Who knows? Maybe if there's something there. It's another mono green pip, so maybe there's something there with Wave 4 Chop Shop, Raider Chop Shop, who wants you to discard mono green pips to help like heal your team 2 across the board, and it kind of continues his theme by also being a heal itself. That card is really cool. I've played a lot of it in the Junkion like Pauper format, and you can't play this card in it necessarily, but I think that that's something to explore going forward and keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I want to point out that the picture is Monso, and I'm not sure if that's Grax or someone else that he's high-fiving.
Is it Kreb?
It might be Kreb, but doesn't have the...
it didn't have the hair.
Yeah, it doesn't have the thing on the side of her cheeks. So, I don't know, maybe Flintlock. It's hard to say. It
looks like Flintlock.
Yeah, so... But anyways, I find it funny that they are high-fiving and they're like, hey, we repair 1 damage, both of us, when if they were damaged at all, they're probably dead. Just saying.
That's true. That is a flavor fail.
Yeah, I think this card is definitely going to see play in Limited because when Rest and Relaxation was in Wave 2, that card put in a lot of work. But granted, that limited format was incredibly slow. So, consider it for your sealed pool at least. It's not as bad as you may think in sealed.
All right. Well, I think we should move on to the final battle card of the week, which is hand-to-hand combat. Hand-to-hand combat is it's an uncommon action. You get a blue pip if you're melee. And then it says, choose one of your characters. When it attacks this turn and doesn't have a weapon, it gets +3 attack until end of battle, and you scrap all of the defender's weapons. So in a melee-focused deck that doesn't necessarily want to be attacking with weapons, this looks kind of like an additional copy of Leap into Battle, which I think is really cool, but you also get the added benefit of scrapping defenders' weapons. I know this is very good against any weapons that like add to defense, something like Ion Blaster of Optimus Prime. No other ones come to my mind at the moment, but I also think this is a really effective way to get rid of stuff like Energon Axe and Blue Mirrors, if that's something you're looking to do, because that card is very often one of the deciding factors in who's winning. It can get rid of certain Battle Masters, depending on if there's like a Fire Drive on the other guy or anything like that. I do think it's interesting that this card, because it wants you not to have a weapon, it's kind of encouraging you to lean further into the defensive theme by playing maybe an armor with your upgrade phase during the turn you're playing it. I mean, this is an interesting consideration. I think weapons generally have been the most powerful upgrade type thus far in the game.
Yeah, I feel like it's a decent sideboard versus the mirror match if you're blue focused. Just anything that like gets rid of your opponent's weapons is pretty cool. And then the added bonus of a free leap into the battle on top of that.
I'm actually not really that big of a fan of this card because if you have a weapon, you don't get any of the effects at all. You don't get +3, you can't scrap any weapon. So if you're already loaded up, this card does nothing. But what this card does do is it makes your little guys' attacks matter in the blue mirror. So +3 may not do that much defense, you might do 1 or 2, but if you're attacking into their big boy and you scrap their weapon, then that'll do probably enough. It's obviously not as good as the bigger they are, but I think it does enough in what it has to do.
When you're swinging on your first turn, if you're the second to go, this is a good leap into battle effect. You could run an extra copy or 2 of this in your deck so you have more chances to draw that. Plus, I found a lot of times when I'm playing blue that the blue deck is based on defense, so you're not playing weapons every attack. It's, when you're playing orange, you're you're trying to play grenade launcher or power punch or something of that ilk every turn to squeeze out every single point of damage that you can. And blue, you're not always doing that. You're trying to make sure that you can survive the swing back or take no damage on the swing back. So sometimes you just really don't have weapons on your characters. So this is going to be effective a lot of times in that case, and it doubles down as a vaporize on your opponent's weapon. So I think this is a really useful card.
I am interested to see how this card interacts with Sturdy Javelin on a ranged character.
So it checks the trigger. So it's not an actual trigger itself. It checks when it triggers. So you wouldn't be able to throw Javelin and then get the effect.
That's unfortunate because that would be really cool, and it would also be another incentive to play it in blue. I do think that if you were gonna play defensively, I don't know, maybe drop 3 copies of extra padding onto your big boy and then play hand-to-hand combat. That's a pretty nice turn. Kind of play both roles in both offense and defense. I think the real cost of this card is that the blue pip is only on melee.
Agreed.
That's what I think. I think it's basically a blank in most of the common archetypes, and that's going to really hurt it. But I do think it's going to be great and sealed. Another card that's great and sealed.
For sure.
Kind of closing things out, we still don't really have any viewer questions yet. I'm really pushing the buck on this. I'm really trying to get people to interact with us in this way because we really have a desire to. We really want to know what you guys want us to talk about because we care about the quality of the content we're putting out here. And you can go ahead and leave comments either on the YouTube video or you can message us in the Contact Us portion of the TransformYourGame.net website. In the future, you can also listen to this cast, the Transform Your Game podcast, on either SoundCloud or YouTube. Maybe it's the other one for you, whichever one works better for you. Each of those has the same channel name as the site. Whatever's easy for you works. We're also working on getting the podcast on other platforms in the middle of Apple Podcasts and potentially some other ones further down the line. You can find links to different places to find us on our website, actually, something that just recently got added. But that ought to do it for us for Episode 4. Thanks to everyone out there listening. If you find the input information here valuable, you can find more strategy, analysis, tournament reports, and more like it at transformyourgame.net. Make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to comment any questions you want us to answer next episode. And until next time, clear eyes, flip bots, can't lose.